Welcome to Next Gen Mentoring Forum. The Next Gen Mentoring Forum series is to empower, educate, and illuminate individuals who are in or interested in the financial planning profession. At each forum, an expert will discuss a topic in the field of financial planning with the purpose of inspiring critical thoughts and discussions. In today's session, I have the honor to interview Dr. Chien-Li on the topic of how to attract women clients. My name is Dr. Chia-Li. I am the assistant professor and the director of the financial planning program at California Lutheran University. I am a certified financial planner practitioner and maintain an active financial planning practice specializing in succession program management at Value Growth Institute. And I've also authored 3 award-winning books. Next Gen Mentoring Forum is sponsored by California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program. We offer MBA in financial planning that helps financial advisors pursue a leadership position or grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning with effective client communication and to streamline practice management. I'm honored today to have Dr. Chien-Li. Dr. Li is an assistant professor of finance at Purdue School of Business at Salisbury University, which is a member of the University System of Maryland. Prior to that, Dr. Li was the assistant professor of finance and financial economics at West Texas A&M University. She was the director of international relations at Financial Planning Standards Board of China. By the way, that is the CFP Board of China, and had an advisor, was an advisor at PwC prior to joining the academia. Dr. Li is a CFA or Charter of Financial Analyst and a certified financial planner. She's probably one of the very few in the world that have CFP in both US and China. She holds a PhD in personal finance from University of Missouri. Now, welcome, Dr. Li. I remember our first time meeting. I think it was a phone conversation that we had. We were introduced by the Financial Planning Association mentoring program. I think you were still in China at the time. Is that correct? It's been so many years.
Yes, Dr. Chien and I think that she was my mentor.
Okay.
Yes, so yeah, kind of you are my mentor when I met you, introduced by Laura, who was still in FPA many years ago when I think it's when I was in my last year of my PhD program. At that time, I was confused about the direction of the future. So I was introduced by Laura, who was the membership manager, and she introduced me to you, and we had great discussion regarding what is the future and what we're going to do in the financial planning industry. So Dr. Chien was very helpful of mentoring me, but she may forget about it because she has been a great mentor for many women and many other, financial planners.
Well, thank you for remembering that. I do remember the very first time we met. I was very impressed with you because you had already have CFP in China and was actually working directly with the CFP board over there. And so I was very, very impressed, and I was very impressed with the journey that you took on to going through your PhD program. So tell us where you grew up and how did you become interested in the financial planning area?
Okay, that is, it is something that has happened many years ago. And I actually was a person who took a different way of not the first time joined financial planning. I was trained as a very typical corporate finance person, joined PricewaterhouseCoopers, working as an advisor, dealing with the merger and acquisition transactions. But at that time, I think that time is like financial crisis, global financial crisis during the 10 maybe. Yes. So
So 2008, 2010 period.
yes. So at that, during that time, I think that things were not quite very normal and not very good in the finance industry as well. I was kind of reconsidering my career path, and it's just a very kind of meant to be occasion that is a financial planning standard for China was just established, and they were recruiting someone who can help them to grow financial planning in China. So I was very interested in that position and joined them, and it kind of opened my eye view of the different world. So because at that time, personal finance in mainland China was still in an infancy stage. So it has been growing for the past 10 years. So I was very interested in that area because that's different. It's a part of the finance world, but it's just a different angle. It's working with individual investors directly rather than working with the corporates. So if you're a person really like, people person, like to help the individuals to help with their investment, help with the overall personal finance, I think that is the job we really want to join. So that is how I came into being in the financial planning area. And I think that later I really want to understand because I began to work with more and more financial planning professionals while in the board. So I really want to know whether or not really academically financial planning or use of financial planners can help increase the portfolio performance or kind of add value to the client's investment performance. So it brings my question, and then to the US, I joined the University of Missouri to begin my journey and begin to kind of out of curiosity to dig the questions. So and that is actually is what I think is my dissertation topic. So the impact of financial planners on the investors' portfolio performance.
And it's interesting that everyone comes through the financial planning field from a various different directions. Some were very lucky that they got into the financial planning field fresh out of the college. I think they were extremely lucky. And you come across becoming a CFP because you were part of the China CFP board, which is very, very extremely lucky to have that. I came across when I was I was in the corporate world as a career changer coming into the industry. And so there are so many different paths that people find their way into the industry. I'm so glad to hear that you were part of the growing profession worldwide. I think from a CFP board's number of CFPs perspective, I think outside of the US, I think China has the largest amount of CFPs outside of the US, followed by Japan. And so I remember many of my friends from Taiwan, and many of my friends in Taiwan also has a different CFP board. Most people, they are still very used to product sales. I think that they are just begun to caught up, like Japan and China, that financial planning is one of those things that it's not just a trend, it's the must do, right, for people. I found it fascinating that reading one of your research, part of that research, and I think it was back in August of 2020 within the Journal of Financial Planning. And I'm going to put some quote in here that will give us a pretty good segue into some of the questions that I have for you. And you mentioned in that particular research that in the US, women control over half of personal assets. But in the world, women control over a third or 30%, more than 30% of the private wealth. Additionally, there was a 31% increase in terms of women who has more than $30 million net wealth from 2017 to 2018. This is a worldwide number. And one of the big key things that you have mentioned early on in your research was that women are becoming more independent in about their investment decision making. So I am curious about why are women important in the financial planning in general, whether or not it's a financial planning in process or financial planning in general?
Thank you for the question. I think Dr. Jen actually did mention about one of the reasons of why the women are important in financial planning. And the one of the most important reason is the increasing wealth of women. So based on my research and the past research by other researchers, we have shown that the number of affluent women has been increasing both in the US and globally, as just quoted by Dr. Jen as well. Um, and absolutely because of, well, in addition to the growth in affluent women, we also say that the women are more and more independent in their investment decision making. That which means that they're not relying on their own judgment, but they also become the dominant role in a household financial decisions. So women were involved and actually took charge of the household investment decision making. So it's very funny actually that if you relate it back to the daily conversations from a practitioner's perspective, and when a couple come into your office and with the man, with the husband and wife, and usually that the wife will be the one who talk about the finances, who talk about how we'll do the decision making. So it is kind of common. So the financial planners that when they talk to a couple, usually that the women has become more and more dominant role in help with the household finance decisions. And the academic research also find that probability of women using financial planning services is higher compared to men. So speaking of this, and I think that it is very important that this women has become a very important mainstream of the clients in the financial planning industry.
And I remember I was having a conversation with one of my very best friend who is also a CFP in the industry. We were talking about in a couple relationship, regardless about who are the dominant party of the clients coming through the office. And we're both noticing that exactly what you say, where women tend to play the dominant role in terms of financial decision making. Mm-hmm. And the more and more women are involved in the financial decision, that tells us that the financial advisors, just like what you mentioned, also need to pay attention about how do we actually work and attract them accordingly. And so before we get there, let's talk about some of the characteristics as women as a client, other than the fact that I know for me, I like to have control. So that's one thing for me, but that doesn't speak for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I know that for most of the husbands out there, if you are like my husband, he will always say, whatever you say, honey, they will just go along with it. So mm-hmm. Tell us about some of the characteristics in terms of women as clients.
Absolutely. I think that you actually mentioned and made the point that it's in a family that whatever you say, quoted by husband, it's very common, maybe not only in your family, but also in most of the families currently. So I think it's lucky for the family, but also as well as the financial planning industry, because we say that the probability of women using financial planners is higher. So back to the characteristics of the women as clients, and based on my research, the recent research co-authored with Mr. Mark Cordes, Women, Wealth, and Demand for Financial Planning Services. Based on our sample, we found that women who are more likely to use financial planning services share some similar characteristics. So such as they are wealthy, they are well-educated, they are financially literate, and they actually have a relatively longer investment horizon. So these are some of the characteristics that we found that is the women who are more likely to use financial planners. So I think that it may help the financial planners who make a profile of their potential clients.
And I think that in your research, you also indicated that other than they are higher net worth, they are well educated, they're more likely to have control in terms of finance. But you also mentioned in your research that it doesn't necessarily mean that they will use financial planner in terms of the financial planning as a service. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that in terms of if there's a correlation between the characteristics or there's a correlation between women actually using financial planner to do the plan?
So can you clarify your question about which relation you are going to, you let me to clarify?
Yeah, so the questions that I have is that, so these characteristics that you defined can be a women client, but from a correlation perspective, do you see wealthy women, independent women, more likely to use a financial planner to do financial planning, or are they more do-it-yourselfer, things like that?
Yes, that's the point. Good. Good question, Dr. Jen. Actually, yes. So when we share the characteristic, we are just talking about the very general characteristic overall. So, and you're right that the wealthy women are actually more likely to use the financial planners based on the research we have conducted. Yes.
And I don't know if there's a correlation between a women client prefer to work with the women planners or not. But I'm just curious, as of now, I pull out the statistic from CFP board, there are only approximately about 23% of the CFPs are women. And what are some of the characteristics in terms of women as a planner that can help attract women as a clients?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that in this particular research, we did not study the characteristic of women as planners, but as a reader, and I definitely read some papers regarding women planners, and definitely we have mixed results based on the prior research. We did not find whether or not there's a higher probability of women to use the women planners, or they have a gender preferences of the planners. But definitely just consistent with the research by the CFP board, women planners were underrepresented in the current financial planners. So I think I would like to share some of the results that I read in the women's initiative called WING research conducted by CFP board, that they shows that quoted here is women more so than men lack adequate information as to what financial planning involves or what it takes to be successful as a financial planner. So they shared some of the characteristic of the women as planners, which was conducted by the 8-group study in 2013. It's kind of a laid back, but I think that it still reflected some of the features of the women planners. So women planners actually are paid less, unfortunately, but it's kind of common across all industry. And women planners are more likely to be paid a salary. So they are younger, they have less experience, and they are more likely to work for a bank, and they are all more likely to be a part of the large practice team. They're not as likely to own her practice. So in terms of their qualifications, compared to men and women planners receive adequate training from firms, they are well trained by educational programs, they are strongly ethical, and they have an advantage with women clients, and they have the characteristic to be a strong financial planner.
It's interesting that all the things that you mentioned in terms of we're not talking about the equality here, but it's just very interesting across the board where women is unlikely to have their own practice. I remember earlier this year, I had the opportunity to interview another women planner, And her firm actually was formed by 4 women planners, 4 CFPs. And all 4 use a integrated approach to work with clients. And I think that through that conversation that I learned, oftentimes women clients seek out women because of the fact there are several things that my clients tells me, and very similar to that particular interview that I conducted, that oftentimes women has a very caring characteristics from a planner as well as from a client perspective. I recall that if I recall all the way back to since the day one of my practice all the way till now, I think that majority of the clients that approach me are all women, even though they're married, but they're the dominant party who wants to be able to relate to in terms of talking about finances. And women tend to refer women clients to planners as well. Not to say that men doesn't do that, but I think that from a characteristics of a planner perspective, I also think that, and this is just my opinion, not based on research, where women planners tend to be a lot more detail oriented. They might be able to find things that not necessarily being able to spot from a different perspective. For example, if you are in the meeting, depending upon your experience, I found that the women planner tend to pick up the nuances. For example, how the clients are talking, how the clients are mentioning few things, or their body language and things like that. Some of the very highly successful male planners also do that, but I think a lot of time I can see women planner tend to be more detailed in terms of these nuances that is under the surface, that is not necessarily showing up in the number, is not necessarily showing up in what they're telling you. And so does that play into why sometimes women clients tend to seek out women planners in terms of working together? What do you think?
Yeah, yes, I can relate. It's as again, it's not in my research, but I can relate that as well. It's based on my study on other research. I mean that other people, other researchers work, and I found that it said that women planners that the women actually have more potential to become successful planners due to their natural features. As you mentioned, that they are detail oriented, they are more sensitive to the body language and other things that they do not tell you, but the client shows you their expression in their expressing their body language, that they are more sensitive. And they can relate to some of the situations if the more women clients coming, and they can relate. And also in that this interesting that the research conducted by the CFP board, they mentioned about that the women planners actually are more successful, or we say women clients are more likely to go to the women planners, especially for the divorce planning or the educational planning. I think it's probably my personal opinion is that is possibly that is because women can be relate to the clients, and as women planners, because of the natural features that they bring in, I think that they are more likely to attract the women clients and be successful in the financial planning industry. So I think this is why we would like to attract the more women planners in the industry, but we are very surprised that we do not see rapid growing of our women planners.
Yeah, I know the CFP board has done the best they could. We jumped from 20 to 23%, not bad, making progress. But as a financial service as a whole, that number hasn't changed for years and years and years. One of the things that you mentioned, that women planners, or women in general, are much more sensitive. I remember early on in my financial planning career, I oftentimes have a married couple clients in my office where the women clients tend to break down. Sometimes the men will break down as well, but most likely the women, because of the stress that they have, they tend to cry in my office and things like that. And I had a nickname. My office coworker, the male coworker, if you will, often tells me that, oh, Chia-Li just make her client cry. But I think that this has something to do with that when clients actually trust you, they tend to be able to show their true emotion. Even though the very first time when I saw a client cry in front of me, I actually didn't know what to do, which is actually good. Doing nothing and just listen is actually the best thing that you could do for clients. These are the things that you learn over time when you're working with clients. So how do we market to women clients? And I know that planners out there, we know that there's only 23% of financial plan CFPs are women, but we have more women than men clients out there. So how do we effectively market to women clients? And this is speaking from both male and female CFPs who are financial planning professionals. How do we go about doing that?
Yes, that is a great question, and it's actually the implications for our paper, and then we hopefully that it can give some insights of the practitioners in the industry. So first of all, that we always say that you need to know your clients. I think that is one of the things that we have been learned as a CFP professionals. We always say that who is your client? You need to know your client. So it's a cliche, but it's also important. So first of all, financial planners need to have a profile of the women who are more likely to use financial planning services. Like recall what features we just shared, that the women who are more likely to use financial planners are wealthy, well-educated, financial literate, and have a relatively longer investment horizon. So if you have the profile of the women in your mind when you try to target your women clients, I think this is helpful that you can, target the correct or we say the right group of the people that you help you to grow your business. So I think that is one of the first steps, that you knowing which women to market and determining the side of the market, but it's not enough. So also we share with our I think the readers in our research, we also recommend that financial institution and practitioners also need to know what the right message is to communicate to these women, what the right time is and what the right media is. So it is critical to know how to speak to the audience using the right language and words. So the goal is to ensure that the message correlates with them by being relevant with respect to their values and beliefs. So for example, if we know that they are likely to be married with children, we may want to start by appealing to their sense of family rather than the benefits of one investment over another. So we can do this by the traditional research approach, but we also do suggested maybe a test and a learn technique. So for example, perhaps we could test for such thing as what topics attract their attention when you're doing the conversation with the women clients, and what can create a positive impression, what may cause a negative impression, and what causes them to take actions and what causes them to not take actions, and giving them discounts or having complete information or kind of the relative brief information. So this is what they call the test and learn technique in the marketing, and we try to do. We recommend it to the financial planners and can do this, and so this way then we can learn using our knowledge about our women profile, but as well as a particular women clients, and we probably need to use this technique to try to work with them.
It's interesting that you mentioned three things, right? You mentioned you have to have a target profile, you have to have the right message, and then you have to test and learn how to approach them. So if I think back in my early days when I first came into the industry, the marketing firm that worked with me, we had specific targets. So I actually, down to the point that I even named my target Cindy. So Cindy was at the time of the marketing, that is because I only work with women business owners. And so women business owner in the industry of construction or in the industry of accounting or law firms, those are my target. And the message that at the time that the marketing firm was saying that I have to make sure that because I work on the succession planning area, so the marketing firm recommended that the messaging ought to be talking about the soft side, which means that most women statistically show tend to likely to transfer their business to their children, to their next generation, or to their family members, or to even down to their employees. So the key message there was to talk with them about, I am the expert in the transfer internally and things like that. And ultimately that the last phase, as you talked about, the test and learn, and those are the one that we actually bring to market to actually see if the message actually works or not. Now, this is many years ago. In today's environment, that social media is much more relevant today, and using the social media to tackle a group of women probably is as effective as those marketing strategies that I was using years and years ago. And so I think that the message that you provided there is very clear that for all planners, whether or not you are new or you're experienced in the industry, having that very specific client profile is important. You have to have the message that cater to your audience. At the same time, you need to test and try out again and again until you get that message right. So it's not an easy task. Marketing to women clients is certainly not an easy task, but certainly can be successful if you can crack the code correctly. So let's switch gear talking about, so how do we work with women effectively or efficiently? As I mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned earlier, that women are much more sensitive in many different things. So in your experience, and tell us, what would you recommend in terms of working with women clients efficiently?
That is something I think that we can discuss for sure. I mean so as we discussed earlier, when we did the research regarding the women clients, and we did find that the women clients have some special features, especially the affluent women. But in generally speaking, they are clients, and I think this suggestions is helpful for both the women and men clients. Is that in the financial planners, we also recommend financial planners to have a better understanding of the relevant behavior emotional factors. So such as the cognitive bias that we already know, that some are confirmation bias or anchor bias that is very common in the investment decision making of the client. So if you notice that you probably want to help the clients to recognize its bias when they do the investment decision making or any other personal finance decision making, as well as that emotions and social influences that you notice that between the clients and the planners, and you notice that, and then you can correctly and rapidly to point it out to the client, to just share with your understanding and to help them to be back to the correct financial planning path. So I believe that the financial institution and also the practitioners would be well served to carefully detail understanding the client journey and the client experience of the journey, and then to make adjustment to improve the experience. So it is possible that if we understand the client's profile and also their behavior better, we probably can tailor their business models to satisfy their clients' satisfy the client's goals. So in order to better serve their women clients, in order to better serve their women clients to their satisfaction based on their behaviors.
And so it's very interesting that you mentioned that, understanding clients' biases when from the very beginning you meet with them, as well as what emotional sides that really drives the clients to do certain things, and you tailor your activities according to it. I think that when I first entering the financial planning industry, that's many years ago, I was more on the technical side. You do the plan, you do the numbers, and you come up with a recommendation, and so on and so forth. But more lately, a lot of the planning techniques that we've seen are more on the soft side, understanding the biases, understanding the client's behaviors, what motivates them. It's really more and more the planners are focusing more on the soft side of the skill of helping client ultimately be successful. Because one of the things that we don't want to do is design and recommend something that clients walked away and do nothing. Because if they do nothing, then it's not necessarily a good plan at all to begin with. And you mentioned about a couple of the biases and a couple of those emotional drivers behind it. If clients are in a different age group, will those biases and emotion changes in terms of different age group?
Yes, so that is a kind of a perspective from the behavioral finance. And so usually that from based on my, understanding, so it's not related to this research, but based on my understanding is that actually that you're right, that the people who have different ages and even the gender and races, that they will behave differently. They will experience the different behavior biases. And there are some of the general biases that have been found common in all the investors, such as the cognitive bias, or the anchor bias, or confirmation bias, or regret bias. So it's like that. If we, for example, if we bought a technical stock many years ago during the financial crisis, and this time, even if we see that the potential growing in the Amazon or in Zoom, we are reluctant to buy them again, because that is a bias that is embedded in the general investor's impression. But they are, as you're right, that the people, when they are in the different stage of the life, and their biases, their dominant bias will be different. And I think that is very important. And when the financial planners, when you confront it with different clients, you need to learn their behaviors by conversation with them, that you can identify the factors that is dominant their bias. For example, that when the researchers, when they analyze the behaviors of the clients, we have modeled them. For example, one type of the clients that they may be very detail oriented. So they like you to show every detail of how you do the plan, and why you do this plan, and what is the consequences, and what the action plans you can offer to them. So this type of person is very detail oriented. If you don't give them the details, they will be frustrated and they don't want to work with you. But on the other side, it is a person who are very sensitive, will be going crazy if you give them the details. So for this type of person and this type of clients, the planners may try to avoid giving them details. You just give them a bigger picture and give them the directions of the plans, and you deal with the details. So I think there's a totally different types of the clients, and the planners should be pay attention to give them different services and strategies, even though maybe the final recommendation is the same, but the delivery of the message should be tailored based on their behaviors.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting point that you pointed out, that clients have, as well as planners, have a different way of receiving messages, right? Mm-hmm. And it's our job to figure it out. What do they prefer? But oftentimes it might be very difficult to find out what their preference is. So I always tell other planners or students that you could ask clients directly. Do you prefer to see bullet points, or do you prefer to see detailed charts and detailed numbers? And I think those are the conversation that it can be easily asked early on. So then you could effectively deliver your message or deliver your recommendations, and the clients will be much more motivated to move forward on their journey. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Other than the bias, other than how to motivate them, there are always techniques that can help planners to become more efficient in terms of communicating with clients in general, not just women. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about, how to market to the client, how to be efficient working with clients, as well as the part of the reason that women becoming more independent. We have to be very conscious about having the right amount of clients come through our door and helping them effectively. But if there's one advice that you will give to our future planners who is either in the industry for a while or new to the industry, what would that be in terms of working with women clients?
I would say know your clients and practice your softer skills, especially for women. I think they value their softer skills more.
Right. So know your client, practice your soft skill to help your clients. I remember late last year, I had a married couple clients. They are in their 60, I think the husband is 67, the wife is 65, and they were having a debate. I call them a debate, even though from my end, it doesn't look like a debate. But the husband was very adamant about investing some sort of direct real estate investment, that he wants to have a rental property to generate retirement income. But the wife was very, very concerned. And I still remember that she had mentioned that if she was younger, meaning 20, 30 years younger, she would have go along with his plan. But because they are older now, she was very concerned about the direct real estate investment. It's a lot of hassle, the hassle that retiree may or may not want to do and enjoy later in life. So I think that you're right, having understanding different stages in life, understanding that soft skill, recognizing that fact, and we can do the best our job to facilitate that conversation, regardless if it's a discussion or debate, but ultimately the decision lies in client's hands. But if we could improve our soft skill, recognizing these, client definitely will benefit from it. So Dr. Lei, thank you so much for such an informative session. We're so glad to have you in our program today. It's such an informative session, and I would encourage everyone to read about your research, and I will include that in our blog website as well, as many of you will revisit later on. So I will include the actual reference of the research. So thank you so much. I also wanted to thank California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program for sponsoring today's Next Gen Mentoring Forum. California Lutheran University School of Management offers MBA in financial planning, helps financial advisors pursue a leadership position or grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning techniques, effective communication, and streamlined practice management. Please sign up for our info session for more information. Now, our next Gen Mentoring session will start the first week of September in 2021. So please stay tuned with a new schedule coming through in the mid-August. And thank you all, and we'll see you at our Next Gen Mentoring Forum early September 2021. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.